Hello and welcome to Access Television, where we shamelessly promote our friends and community. On this episode of Access TV, we explore the many acts of good citizenry happening in our diverse community, from protecting the low-income residents of the Downtown Eastside to defending the spawning grounds of salmon near Lillooet or the herring in Howe Sound. Citizens are waking up everywhere and regrouping, remediating, and repurposing their towns, cities, villages, and communities. Access TV steps up to tell their stories.
Hello and welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and communities. I have with me two of our on-air personalities at Access TV, but they're also on-air personalities at Co-op Radio CFRO 100.5, and they are moving very shortly. And I have Molly Caron and Gunargie O'Sullivan. And Molly, first tell us, why is Co-op moving?
Well, we're just being temporarily displaced, and we'll be back in 18 months. So we're going to move over to the Aboriginal Mother Centre at 2014 Wall Street. And we're doing some fundraising right now. We're asking our listeners and viewers to help support having a wheelchair-accessible bathroom. The goal for that is $1,000. And a window put into the studio so that people walking by can watch radio happen, community radio happen.
Sounds great. And I have Gunargie with us, and she does a lot of the Aboriginal and Indigenous peoples programming. Tell us a little about that, Gunargie.
All right. We have a lot of First Nations programs at Co-op Radio, starting on Mondays between 1 and 2:30, a show called When Spirit Whispers. Tuesday, Snawale, as we revitalize language with Barbara Harris and Woody Morrison. Wednesday, Late Night with Savages, Brittany Ross, myself, Patricia Burns, your wagon. And then on Thursday with Ross Bones between 5 o'clock and 6, Clahalia. And we also have Métis Matters. So this move to the Mother Centre is a really great move for us, and hopefully by the end of the year we should have the whole week filled up with First Nations programming.
Oh, thank you, Gunargie. And for those that are interested, go to www.coopradio.org for more information and to donate. And I'm back with Molly, who's going to introduce us to our next piece here.
Speaking of the Downtown Eastside, there was an inaugural meeting of the Downtown Eastside United group, working title, and I understand that there's going to be 9 meetings a year. The next one is happening on the 3rd of May at Dodson Hall, the new Dodson Hall, at 25 East Hastings. You were part of that inaugural meeting, and you have a recording to share with us, don't you?
I do, and that meeting's at 3 o'clock.
3 on May the 3rd.
And here's the piece. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. People. Power. When I say condos, you say hell no. Condos. Hell. Condos. Hell. Condos. Hell. When I say fight it, you say united. Fight it. United. Fight it. United. Fight it. United. When I say justice, you say now. Justice. Now. Justice. Now. Justice. Now. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. People. Power. Thank you very much. That's all I've got to say.
Access TV volunteer Imtiaz Popat has been very busy with the Vaisakhi celebrations this year. He's been speaking with Raman Kiera of the Guru Nanak Temple, where they have a free kitchen and a truck that brings food to the people of the Downtown East Side.
This is MTS Papad watching Access Community Television, supporting our friends and community. And I'm here with Raman Khera of the Guru Nanak Free Kitchen. So Raman, happy Vaisakhi to you.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
Tell us about the Guru Nanak Free Kitchen.
Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen, it's a non-profit organization, and what we do is we bring langar to those in need.
Right, and langar is sharing food that you do here at the Gurudwara.
Yes, so langar is blessed food that's prepared and made at the temples.
Right, so the idea is you're taking the concept of langar into the community and serving those who need food.
Yes, absolutely. What we do is we prepare langar, our blessed food at the temples, and then we take it to communities that are in need of food. So the Downtown Eastside, the strip in Surrey, near Wally, then a variety of other locations, yeah.
And how long have you been doing this for?
Me personally, I've been doing it for 5 years. Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen has been doing it for about 6.5 years.
And it started here at the Suksagar Gurudwara here in Queensborough in Westminster.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And why do you do this?
Why do we do it? It's part of our culture and our religion. It's called what we call seva, selfless service. So it's just, involving the community and, just being on an equal level.
Right.
Yeah.
So you basically take the concept of langar, which is sharing food, to the Downtown East Side or to Surrey, where we take the free kitchen.
Yes. Yeah. Very simple, very easy. Volunteers prepare the food, the langar, at the Gurdwaras, and then we have volunteers that drive the truck, and then we have volunteers that serve the langar.
Right. Okay. And how long have you been doing this for?
Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen has been doing this for about, I'd say, about 6 years now.
Right, and you're celebrating Vaisakhi, which is the celebration of the harvest, which is food, but it's also the birth of the Sikh faith, the religion, and you're talking, this is part of the values of Sikhism.
Yes, absolutely.
My name is Vinder Singh Brad. I work 7 years. Homeless people everywhere come here, maybe 500-600 every week, every Sunday, 1 o'clock come here.
I've been doing this for about 2 years now. What got me started was, it was actually a couple of my friends were coming here quite often before, and I meant to come and just mean, how life goes, it's very busy, but the thing is that once you start coming and you kind of see the happiness you give on people's faces after feeding somebody hungry, you just can't stop coming back. So that's one of my main reasons to keep coming back, is just you're giving somebody food, and it just doesn't get any better than that. This organization was started by like-minded individuals. It's for the community, by the community. It's just seva, that's what we call it in Punjabi, seva. It's just to give back, selfless service, right? That's what it means. And just to basically give back to the community whatever we can. We do this once every Sunday of the month, and then we do it from 1 to 2. We feed about 3,500 people an average a month, and we do it every second Friday and every last Friday at the First United Church just down the street here. We do a lunch service or a dinner service.
So tell me, what got you started in this?
Basically seeing a lot of the people here and their faces, and that they need help, so just kind of want to help them. That's for me, and yeah, same thing for me, just feeling bad for these people,
To get involved with Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen, you can call 604-442-7382, or you can visit our website at jnfk.org, and there's information about our weekly events and whatever other events we're doing through the years.
Well, the Guru Nanak Free Kitchen is cooking all week, but you can find their truck on the Downtown East Side on Sundays. Speaking of lunch, how does a $25,000 lunch sound to you? Well, Melissa Fong caught the trend and created a buzz by challenging us to mobilize our money differently. Here is Sid Tan in conversation with Melissa Fong.
Hello and welcome to Access Community Television. My name is Sid Tan, and today we're here with Melissa Fong. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Melissa is a blogger. She's also a feminist, anti-racist writer and blogger with that, and she's an anti-gentrification exponent. Glad to have you here, and I've noticed that you've just gained a bit of notoriety lately, which is people are learning about the hashtag 25K lunch. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little about that.
Well, it all started with Bob Rennie, a condo marketer in Vancouver, the condo marketer in Vancouver, who hosted a lunch for Vision Vancouver and Mayor Gregor Robertson at $25,000 a seat. And that is a lot of money. And one of the common criticisms that came out of some of the discussions during the Downtown Eastside Local Area Plan was that there wasn't enough money to build social housing. But at $25,000 a seat for lunch, obviously there is money, and it's just not being put towards the correct priorities.
Some 50 people attended that lunch too, didn't they?
Yes, so if you do the calculations, if you multiply 50 times $25,000, I did the calculation, and that's about 278 people that could have been housed under welfare rates for a year.
Were there, when you saw the entries that came in for the meme contest for the lunch, was there anything that surprised you, or was there anything that you took away from that?
One of the fun things is that it brought it to a public forum. Memes are very accessible, done through social media. And so people who possibly wouldn't have engaged in politics before felt comfortable engaging in this forum. Also, I think a lot of people had a lot of frustration with politics and feeling disempowered and not feeling heard. And so this was their opportunity to sort of, let out that frustration.
Yeah. And the frustration was there because of the housing situation. There was, you mentioned very specifically at the local area planning process where you made a presentation that it was more of opportunity, and it was not meant to be insulting against our mayor.
It definitely wasn't a personal affront from my point of view. I think that there is a lot of frustration out there, though, and especially amongst people who experience poverty and people who have been fighting for housing for so long, and they definitely took advantage of this political moment to have their voices heard, which is always a good thing.
So I have to ask you this, hot on the heels of the hashtag 25K lunch, I noticed that on your blog you have a piece up there, your blog, which is Passionate Rants, Never Dogmatic. You have a piece that starts with, once upon a time, there was a Vancouver mayor who promised he'd end homelessness. Right. I guess this, again, is not personal, but in fact, he ran that he would end homelessness.
Yes. So this was sort of inspired by a couple things. He did run on a platform to end homelessness, and during consultations about the Downtown Eastside LAP, multiple people brought up that you want a campaign based on ending homelessness. I voted for you based on that good faith, and this hasn't happened. And recently, Gregor Robertson has announced his, campaign for re-election, and he also took a step back on his promises about ending homelessness. And there's a Global News article talking about it, and it was just interesting the way Gregor positioned it as a province problem, that the province is not putting enough money in. And then
the federal government.
And the federal government. And then Rich Coleman pipes up and says, I've never heard anything like this from Gregor. My conversations with him, he's never said anything that he's unhappy. So it was kind of like pointing fingers, and I wanted a way to talk about that. I felt like nobody was talking about that after that article came out, and I wanted a way to talk about that in an entertaining way. And so I wrote that in sort of one draft, and it got a lot of attention because it's an entertaining way to enter this conversation.
You're a very prolific writer, but beyond writing on blogs and all that, you're actually studying, or you are an urban planner, right? You're a PhD student?
I am a PhD student, an academic, not a practicing planner. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And how you just recently came back to Vancouver after being in...
About 6 years in Toronto. I've always been back and forth between Vancouver and Toronto, but I'm majority time here now, yes.
Yeah. Are you getting excited about the upcoming civic election? I mean, are you wondering what's going to happen? And
I am really excited. There are a lot of new parties coming to the fore, and I'm excited for people to announce their slates and people to announce who is going to be up against Vision Vancouver. you can't deny that Vision Vancouver is very popular. I think that people really following politics and following these community discussions are very aware of the promises that Vision is not making, is not achieving. So
we're running out of time, Melissa, very quickly. Are you going to be a candidate?
Lord, no.
Well, you've been a very vocal
I am not a politician.
Okay.
I am not a politician.
We've got to get going now, Melissa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And people can follow Melissa at Twitter. On Twitter at International at MF, and also her blog, Passionate Rants, Never Dogmatic, is at melissafong.ca. Thank you for being with us. My name is Sid Tan, Access Community Television, where we shamelessly promote our friends and community. Until we meet again, straight shooting and tight edits.
And now we go back upstream to get an update from LJ Meyer and his coverage of the Cayoosh Creek Indian Band and how they're handling the Seton Creek water intake. We have an update on the Cayoosh Creek Indian Band's protest over the Seton River water intake project near Lillooet. The protests had previously stopped work on the District of Lillooet's water intake system. However, after the Environmental Appeal Board ruling, work recommenced under the scrutiny of private security guards.
My name is Michelle Edwards. I'm chief of the Jekyll-Wash community, or the Cayoosh Creek Indian Band. Standing here in the Statliam Nation, I'm standing along Cayoosh Creek. Some people call it the Seton River, but locally we call it Cayoosh Creek. What you see behind me right now is some works that have been ongoing that they have just started up. This work is proceeding as a decision came back from the Environmental Appeal Board not to grant our stay of works. At first I was a little bit concerned about it, but after I reviewed the Environmental Appeal Board's decision, there is a lot of information in that decision that favors us before we go to a hearing. The Environmental Appeal Board has clearly stated that the district is still moving ahead at their own risk, and the risk that the Environmental Appeal Board is talking about is that we're still going to be going for a hearing. That hearing will happen in maybe 2 or 3 months. The decision that the province has made to stay neutral is something that I don't agree with. I talked with the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and they have been made aware of how this actually came about, that there was no consultation at all with my community or even the nation. We have to look at it as protection. We're protecting it for the future generations and for everybody, not just First Nations people. It's everybody that is going to depend on water. It's everybody that depends on wildlife. And I think you may have got some footage of the large cement structures, and those things are huge. There's no way you could tell me that those are going to go into a river and safely without doing some kind of harm. We can't even go panning without getting permits, but yet, Department of Fisheries and Oceans is granting them authority to do this. And I'm encouraging everybody to protest peacefully. It's nice that we have community support from the members of Lillooet. They've been coming down every day to our fire. We still have our fire going. We're still protesting peacefully. And I'm encouraging everybody to protest peacefully. We have our protest fire, and we welcome everybody to come and speak with us.
The intake appears to have been completed, and excavators are backfilling around it. Workmen put up a curtain to prevent filming. But people could see the water intake over the curtain fairly easily. We've put in a request to get an interview or a statement from the municipality of Lillooet. The Chief Administrative Officer, Brad McCrae, told us that as the matter is in front of a quasi-judicial party, the District of Lillooet will not be providing comments at this time. Well, the protest fires have gone out in Lillooet. It was just too risky. It seems someone was loading the firewood with bullets. We'll keep you updated. Speaking of protecting what's precious to you, when is it right to apprehend a child? And what happens to the mother when that child's been apprehended?
All right. Recently, we had the opportunity to interview Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond, and she wrote reports from 2007 to 2014. And in light of that, I decided to invite Diane Johnson into the studio with us to talk about her case dealing with child apprehension. How long have you been living in Vancouver for, Diane?
I've been living in Vancouver for 13 years.
13 years?
Yes.
And while you were here, you had your first child apprehended. What year did that happen?
It was 2001, and it was my second child that got apprehended.
Was it?
Yes.
And what happened to your first child?
My first child was in care of the ministry.
Already?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
And so what happened when your second child got apprehended? How did that feel?
Pretty sad and hurtful, and I'm dealing with a lot of emotions around it, yes.
And you have been for how many years? Since 2001?
Yes.
That's a long time.
Yes.
And did you ever get your first child back?
Yes, he came back. He was 16 when he moved back home.
Oh my goodness. So you were able to get acquainted with your child at the age of 16?
Yes.
Wow, that's also very devastating. And is he still friends with you and a part of the family structure?
Yes, yes he is. He actually lives on his own, and he's doing very well on his own right now. He's 22.
And so when your oldest son was in care, was he with extended family or other family members?
No, he was in foster care.
And how about your second child that you lost to the ministry in 2001? How did that happen?
I was in a second stage housing, and it was at Broadway and...
in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood, yes. Mm-hmm. And she got apprehended from my care.
While you were in transition home?
Yes.
And from what we gather, transition homes are meant to support a mother in need.
Yes.
And yet they failed you, and you had your child apprehended while you were reaching out for help.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And your child has been in care since then?
She lives with her grandma. She lived with her dad for 3 years of her young age. And so her grandma's been raising her for well over 6 years now.
Well, that's good that she's with extended family or with the grandma, right?
Yeah.
But what are your visitation rates like?
Pretty much next to nil.
Really?
I'm not getting much access to her. And I would love to have more access to Jasmine, its mom, Diane.
Again, so your daughter is like an acquaintance to you, and that's your daughter, your second oldest.
Yes.
So how could the system have served you better in order to support, like, say, family preservation versus, like, child apprehension?
I would have liked to have had family preservation involved, which they weren't. I think that I got 1 month of them, and then after that they stopped the preservation and then put Jasmine into her father's care.
So your daughter's been through a lot.
Yeah.
Although she has stayed within the family, she's still been handed from one, like the father to the grandmother. And how old is she now?
She is coming up to 13.
And it still appears to me that it's just as painful for you now as it may have been like in 2001 when you first lost her, right?
It's very devastating. Actually being able to tell my story a little bit is a little bit scary and intimidating, but I'm wanting to do whatever it takes to get more access to my daughter.
Why do you need access to your daughter?
Because she's the love of my life.
Mm-hmm. Do you miss her?
A lot.
So what have some of the emotional impacts been on you as a mother, as a human being?
The emotional impacts is that I beat myself up. I'm angry at myself, and I'm hurtful at myself.
And does the system tend to wear you down at all? Like, it's 12 years and you still don't have your daughter back.
It's wearing me down, yeah. It's taking everything I've got, yes.
And what's it going to take to support you in getting your daughter back into your care, Diane?
Having the things in place for me to be able to, if I have somebody there that's going to support me, to be able to have her back.
Well, I'm confused because you've lost your oldest son. He came back to you. You lost your second child in 2001. Yet you still have purity in your care, and you have other children too. How many other children are you currently looking after that you're parenting?
I have purity right now. Yes, and I've been raising her in the worst part of town, which statistically is Downtown Eastside. And I've got really good reports on her, school reporting. She's a well-adjusted child in the community. She does a lot of performances. She's pretty bright. And
so you have a positive influence on purity, yet the ministry will not let you have your oldest daughter back. That doesn't make sense to me. How do you feel about the situation, Purity?
Sad.
Sad? Why?
Because I don't get to see my sister.
Really? How often have you seen your sister?
Not that much.
Not that much. Do you feel like your rights are not being respected? How does that make you feel?
Really sad.
Really sad, eh? When you get to see your sister, how does it feel?
Really happy.
Happy? Really? Does it feel a little bit awkward because you don't really know her? You don't care, do you? You're just happy to see your sister. Nice. So what difference would it make if your sister was able to live with you and your mom?
I would have someone to play with at home, and she's like a role model to me because she's really smart.
And if there was something you could say to Child and Family Services, what would it be? The ministry, what would you say to them about your sister?
That I want her back.
You want her back? And how about you?
I want her back.
If you were a representative for Child and Family Services, Diane, what would you recommend to the government?
I would recommend that I would have support, meaning that the things that I need to housing, proper schooling, education, nurturing, loving, caring, compassionate.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing your story with our viewers. It's a very important story that needs to be heard. And I really appreciate the words that you've shared with us about your experience in not knowing your sister.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond, the representative for children and youth, was recently at Vancouver Co-op Radio for an interview with Woody Morrison and Gunargie O'Sullivan on the native language show Snawayeth.
Today we have a special show for you. We have the representative for children and youth, Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond, and she is responsible for a number of reports that have been submitted from 2007 to 2014. She has been referred to as the MCFD watchdog, and she's here with us today to tell us more about the reports that have been released from 2007 to 2014. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I'll also say that my First Nations name, my Indian name is Akikwe. and I'm a member of the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, but I am the independent child advocate for BC, and I have been pretty busy since 2007 looking at cases involving First Nations and Métis children throughout British Columbia. I've had more than 12,000 advocacy cases and had to produce quite a few reports about whether or not we're making the difference we need to make in the lives of families to support children, First Nations children, to stay strongly connected to their culture, their language, and their families. So, why is it that if they are getting better, why is it that I get so many calls from First Nations children and families saying, help us, we're really stuck in this child welfare system and we can't get what we need. So the good news is we've got a lot of opportunity to improve. The bad news is, despite some of the advertising that you may have seen from government, the situation on the ground for First Nations and Aboriginal children in BC is one where there's a lot of work to be done and they're not getting support that they need.
Well, mainstream media is covering this report. It seems like it reflects badly on First Nations child and family, but while talking to you now, it's very clear that it's a reflection of government policies and services.
I think that's a really big issue, that how things get interpreted when they come out. I really look at it from the perspective of how are children being served. And for First Nations children, they have rights. They have the right to be safe. They have the rights under, the UN Convention, the rights of the child welfare legislation. But they also have the right to be connected to their family, to their community, their language. You have to be connected to your family, usually to be connected to your language and your culture, depending on what your nation tribe is. And in BC, of the kids in care, the 8,000 or more kids in care, more than half are Aboriginal. Most of them are First Nations, from First Nations communities in BC, although they do come from First Nations communities all over Canada. $66 million was spent in BC over a decade in these hotel rooms talking about, are we going to have a different system of governance? But we don't have any services. It's like every child counts. And that's one of the things you'll see in the reports from my office. I do these big reports on systems, but I also do a report. If a child has committed suicide, I look at it in depth with the family. What could have been done differently? Did we actually reach that child and support them? And it isn't just about a dollar sign. And when it comes to First Nations families, we have a lot of work to do. And British Columbia has advertised for over a decade that, the answer is close, But I think what my report exposed in November was that was just mostly a lot of communications releases, and behind it was really no solid planning and no real collaboration with people who are involved in the lives of children. Support mom to get good housing. Support the band to make a priority on housing, to give it to moms that have kids that need that. Make it the priority. Make sure the mom facing violence is supported. Child welfare has been used as a blunt instrument in First Nations families, disrespecting history, disrespecting culture, and disrespecting the rights of kids. We got to change that, but we got to strengthen the position of those kids. 80% of our kids are in urban centers in British Columbia. They're from BC, 203 First Nations here. They're from Alaska. Haida Nation spans 2 countries, right? Mm-hmm. And borders. Cree Nation, I'm from the Cree Nation. My kids are here. We span all kinds of borders, but we can work with that. We are resilient. Our children and families are resilient, but we can't be resilient on our own without any support. We want their culture to be supported, their language, and we want them to feel that unconditional love that many generations of First Nations didn't get because of the boarding schools and the residential schools. Yeah. Make sure your services can meet the needs of families. Go to where they are. And even the Ministry for Children and Families itself, like that ministry should be indigenized. It should be strong capacity. Every person in that ministry should be thoroughly trained, not only on history of First Nations people everywhere, but in relation to the tribal areas they're working in. They should be educated by the elders of that region. They should go to the funerals. They should observe the protocols so they learn how the families work and respect the families.
I would just like to comment that I think the idea of taking the family into care is really a good idea.
We have to deal with some of our behaviors that are not healthy. We have to face that, but we need to deal with the people who are not in our face judging us. And that you'll really see that in my reports if you read them carefully. It's not about judging.
What we do is we have counseling, but also with our Strengthening Families and our Strengthening Fathers program, we don't try to fix you. And then with the fathers, we start talking to them, what are you going to teach your children? If we talk about abuse, we're not going to talk about abuse itself. We're going to talk about what are you going to teach your children about this. A child is somebody who has not yet learned the proper ways of doing things. And when I would sit down with these old men, they would say to me, I'm going to show you something. And then they would show us. Sometimes it was words, most of the time it was by actions.
Another really important question for me and from my perspective is how has Aboriginal or First Nations Child and Family Services responded to your report?
Well, in BC, there's 23 delegated Aboriginal agencies, and then there's a number of organizations. There's chiefs, there's political organizations, and others. I think the responses have been mixed. I think one of the difficulties when I released the report, I decided to do something that I knew it was going to be painful, but we had to get through it. And that is I actually released the budgets of how much money people have. So it was a bit tough because people had the same number of children, and some organizations had 5 or 6 times more money than another. And there was no logic to it. And I did it in part just because I thought government needs to be accountable for how it spends the money and how it funds things.
Well, congratulations on your latest book. Can you share us some poetry, maybe perhaps the one that you mentioned earlier?
I call it Grandchildren. It goes like this. Grandchildren are full of endless questions. Grandpa, how did the bear walk on you? How did the sun set on your arm? Where's the moon when it is snowing? My answers are never the same, and I forget how I've answered them before. It's nighttime, I say. Close your eyes and go to sleep. But Grandpa, you know I always sleep with my eyes open. Grandchildren see the world in full color and taste the sound of every word they are told.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
International Women's Day was the 8th of March, and Vancouver Co-op Radio had a special radio show called Telling It to the Stone. It very much featured women of all backgrounds, a lot of whom were First Nations, artists, singers. You can find it on Ustream under Telling It to the Stone or on Vancouver Co-op Radio archives. We're going to show you some highlights right now.
Just sort of similar to your story was I ended up having knee surgery because I played a lot of sports, and so when I was recovering from that, I was just kind of like trying to find something to do with myself, and I started drawing just for myself, and I ended up producing this series of drawings of women in them, and like people really reacted really well to them. So that's sort of how I started to kind of latch on to being an artist full-time.
Blue sky blue, got me in my walking shoe.
Io voglio la soupe de pesce. I want some fish soup. Thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Fiona York. I'm a program director with Enterprising Women Making Art. So again, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to talk about our program. And I guess what I wanted to say is that currently we represent about 80 or over 85 women artists. And if you're listening and an artist, an emerging artist, and interested in getting involved with the program, you're welcome to come by and talk to us about membership. Because we're very central and very visible, a lot of women are just coming by or maybe through word of mouth here about what we do. So you're definitely welcome to email us as well at uma at etira.bc.ca. EWMA is Uma. Or come by at 56 East Hastings. And again, we're open 7 days a week, generally from 10 to 6.
And this is something we gotta say to you, sister.
want to acknowledge my grandmother, my Baba. I'm Ukrainian and Polish, the background. Her name was Zanoka. She was born Wozny. She was married to Semchuk. And one of the things at this time when we're looking at what's happening in Ukraine, I'd like to send out prayers for all the Babas, all the grandmothers who are holding their families together the best they can with love and with acceptance. And I'd like to acknowledge them. Baby, feels like my back ain't got no
Wow, thanks for the crew at Access TV for capturing that. Next up, we have Robé Hardnett with the Street Beat Entertainment Society, where they encourage diversity, self-esteem, and social awareness with youth through entertainment. Here, Robé is in conversation with George Jolly, who's also host of 1 O'Clock Jump at Co-op Radio. Here they are discussing Vancouver's Black history.
Hi. I'm Robé Hardnett, and today I have with me what everyone that I've met since I've been here call the historian, Mr. George Jolly. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine.
Cool. Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this. Let's get right into it.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a bit about how long have you been in the Vancouver area?
I arrived here in 1957. Area. I was stationed at NAS Woodby. And so I used to come to Vancouver in 1958 was the first time I set foot in Vancouver.
And you were telling me earlier, from the Detroit area.
Yes, I'm from Detroit.
Oh, the Motor City.
Yeah, they when I joined the Navy, they stationed me out in the Pacific Northwest in the boondocks at that time.
So tell me this, you know, as I said earlier, everywhere I went, I would ask about Vancouver, the history of Vancouver. Your name come up. Why is that so?
Well, I meet a lot of people, and I like talking to people, and I don't think I'm a threat to people, and people find me easy to talk to, and I find that I enjoy talking to people, and once people get to know you and feel that they're safe with you, they'll share, and then you share back and forth your history and who you are, where you're from, and so that's been just something that I've just, I guess, been born with or whatever. But it's helped me to get to understand what's happening in Vancouver.
I see, and with that, you just sort of do like computers. You just chronicle all that information that about the early history. Let's get into some of that early history. Sure. Who would you consider some of the early black pioneers?
Well, there's a whole list of them. I'm just going to run them down now. You know, blacks have been in BC since 1850. They came up on a ship called the Commodore and settled in Esquimalt. And then from Esquimalt, they went to settle Salt Spring. And then the early families were the Clarks and the Alexanders.
I see.
Then some of them moved into Vancouver. You had the Banks and the Crumps and the Burnett's, the Joneses, the Kings, the Moores, Vive Moore, the Risbys, the Pankeys, the Pryors, the Paynes, the Sneeds. Now the Sneed family is an interesting family. Because of the Sneed family, Ray Don Chong comes from the Sneed family.
Ray Don Chong?
Yeah.
Really?
Because Tommy Chong is from Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
And he married into the Sneed family. And the Sneed family is from northern Alberta, and they moved into BC. And so they're a pioneer family. So then you had the Collins family. There was Eleanor Collins. But a lot of people don't know that Thelma Gibson and Pearl Brown were sisters with Eleanor.
Okay.
And they were each quite profound in their own endeavor.
I see. Now, with you saying that, how would you say they contributed to the Vancouver community, being, as you put it, the stable of things that started back then?
Right. Well,
how did they contribute?
I think that they gave their children something to look forward to, and their grandchildren. And I think by some of the trials and tribulations they went through, they were able to establish themselves with the racism and stuff that was going on at the time in the 50s and 60s in Vancouver, and by the way, still is there today, that, you know, they gave a strength to their children and grandchildren.
Now, did they own businesses back then, or were they contributing in terms of trying to, what's the word I'm looking for, bring the community together? Were they the point people of that time?
There was Vi's Steakhouse, and there was a couple of other restaurants that they had, but I can't remember the name of them right now. Also, you had the Masonic, the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, who was doing things in the community to help people out. And they have been here 95 years. They are still the oldest ongoing black organization in BC. They're 95 years old.
I see.
And I'm a member of that organization, so I've seen stuff.
You know, there's so much that I could ask you. I mean, we could go on and on. With the time we have, we're going to kind of like wrap it up. What do you see as being part of the past history, and what do you see forward for taking place with the black community? If you could capsulize it for us.
Well, the past history, we're a strong, beautiful people. That's the past. We've gone through a lot. We helped build this country. We helped build it by building the railroad, along with other people that were able to build the railroad.
Exactly.
And other jobs that we have been involved in. The future, you know, I scratch my head sometimes when I look at the future. You know, we got some beautiful young people out there that are trying to do things, but sometimes I feel that they're lost.
Right.
Because they don't know the history.
Right.
And I think the sad part about it is that we haven't taken our history and put it in book form or DV form. And
here's what's good.
Pass it out.
We're going to work on that.
All right.
Okay? We're going to make sure we can make that happen.
Thank you.
All right. I very much appreciate you coming in today.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Robé Hardnett. Next up, How Sound is How Sound? A short documentary by Richard MacDonald. In this next film, we're going to see how the stressors of the logging and mining industries have affected the marine life in the waters that reach from Horseshoe Bay up to Squamish and over to Gibsons. This year has been a record year for herring, but are there too many fishermen and not enough fish?
The Howe Sound has been polluted over years by various different activities. Early days, there was a very big copper mine up in Britannia, and the copper mine actually created the highest point source of pollution in North America at the time. The other big industry on Howe Sound has been logging over the years, and there's been a couple of mills up in Squamish Way, wood fiber, and consequently, which is also closed now.
Squamish Streamkeepers were originally formed when the coal stocks went down. There were streamkeeper groups formed all over the coast to try and help bring back the freshwater lifespan of coho. But along the way, we also started working in the ocean. There used to be a big herring run in Howe Sound. It used to spawn in the Masheter Blind Channel. When they put a large sawmill in there in the late 60s, overnight, the herring, 500,000 herring died off. Within about 5 years, the herring run had virtually disappeared. The eelgrass beds that they had spawned on disappeared as well. So we never saw herring in Howe Sound after about the mid-70s. The watchman at the Squamish terminals noticed herring milt around the dock. And he asked us to go investigate. And we happened to be there at low tide. We went under the dock, and here were millions and millions and millions of herring eggs on creosote pilings. Virtually all of them died. Creosote pilings are used to support docks. because wood can be eaten by worms called teredo worms, they put creosote on the outside to inhibit the teredo worms and other life forms from eating up the piling. So it extends the life of the piling dramatically. The problem is it also kills good things that want to spawn on there, such as herring eggs. But now we've learned that we can turn these bad pilings into good pilings just by putting superficial coatings on them that work to the herring's benefit. So we wrapped a lot of the pilings with plastic, black plastic like you use in construction, to prevent the creosote seeping out and affecting the eggs. And then we covered that with a weed control material, thinking that'll give a nice soft base for the herring to spawn on. And to our astonishment, when we came back a week or so later, this material was plastered with eggs, and they all hatched out as best we could tell. So then, for the next year, we went and did every single piling we could access, about 170 pilings that we could get to at very low tides. We wrapped them with the plastic and the weed control material, and we even ran some of the weed control material in between the pilings. And lo and behold, almost 100% hatch out.
We've just had a soil remediation on Britannia Mine. Same thing with wood fiber. Wood fiber is also cleaned up. We still have another mill operating up Port Mellon, but that's probably one of the cleanest mill sites in North America. They've really done a really good job of cleaning up their act from being a really dirty mill to a much cleaner mill. The Howe Sound is actually in a rebirth state. We're seeing that with the industrial cleanups, we're seeing a lot of return of health. We're seeing a lot of indicators of that. There's been a relocated pod of Pacific white-sided dolphins that have returned into the Howe Sound, and that's a whole new event we've never seen before. We had an incredible run of pink salmon just recently, and then we've also had salmon running into all the local streams, even Britannia, which never saw salmon go up in the last 100 years. So I would say it's in a very good state of rebirth right now. Again, this is a precarious state. If the industry continues on at the rate it is, I'm afraid that we won't see the dolphins if there's a gravel mine. We won't see the whales coming back in. And there's actually been some whale sightings right, within earshot of where we are right now. So I really do think that there's some good opportunities, but I think if we don't take the opportunity to turn this into more of a tourism area rather than an industrial one, I don't think we're going to enjoy that kind of thing. Now what we're worried about is future stressors. So that might look like something like a proposed gravel mine over in McNabb Creek, and that has us seriously concerned. And then there's also stressors of possible a liquefied natural gas facility, which is proposed for Squamish at current times. So it's more the future we're worried about than the current. They've finally come to the point where the Howe Sound is restoring its health. I think Howe Sound needs to be protected because it's close to the biggest population center in British Columbia, and if we can't demonstrate good conservation to the populace that lives right next to it, I think we have a really big challenge trying to get to anybody who lives outside of the ocean and doesn't see what it is. So I think that's probably one of the things that really makes it important to focus on Howe Sound. Howe Sound has a lot of tourism, it has a lot of kayaking, it has scuba diving, it's got nature tours, there's a lot going for it. But it's getting very challenging because right now we can see that industry is running right up against that. There's a lot people can do to help. People can actually take an interest in it, take the time to become involved with organizations like Marine Life Sanctuary Society of British Columbia. We've got a very active volunteer group that actually goes to the ocean and shows people what's in the ocean. We use divers to go in and they collect things, and then we have marine biologists on shore who do interpretations for people and individuals. It takes a lot to run programs like that, and the volunteers are always useful to have, and they're always hard to find. The other thing people can do is they can actually learn what the rules are, so that when they see people doing things that they can actually report to the right governing bodies, so that if you see somebody illegally poaching an area, you know where to call, who to call, that sort of thing. And that's where we're working on signage programs. We're working on various different ways of educating people with a stewardship program we've got. Our stewardship program actually allows you to go to our website, look at the manual, and you'll be able to tell what you need to do if you want to be a steward of your own beach.
The way other people can help us out is keep your eyes open. When you go walking, especially at low tide, keep your eye on the shorelines. Look at bladder wrack and see if you see eggs on them. Herring eggs are tiny, but if you get close enough and look and see and give us a report where you see herring spawn, anywhere in Georgia Basin is potentially a herring spawning area. typically they require some protection from big winds. They don't like to lay their eggs on areas where waves are going to crash on them. The west side of Georgia Strait's in pretty good shape because they spawn all along the flats of the east side of Vancouver Island. It's the east side of Georgia Strait where most of the trouble is, because wherever there's a protected bay, there's usually a marina in there. And you'll probably find historically that most of those bays had herring spawning at one time. If we can bring them back in Squamish Harbor and possibly in Falls Creek, why can't you bring them back everywhere?
Well, from herring right on up the food chain, good citizenry is returning to our waters. Gratitude to the stream keepers and the Marine Life Sanctuary of BC for that. Speaking of good citizenry, the Metro Vancouver Alliance is well on their way with research action teams bringing issues to the platform, ready for the municipal election here in Vancouver in November. Here we have highlights from their founding assembly on March 19th.
We're just about to welcome 600 people into this auditorium for the founding assembly of the Metro Vancouver Alliance. This has been 4 years in the works to bring faith, labor, and community together.
Tonight we have reached the starting line. It is a culmination of countless hours of commitment, of energy, effort, and inspiration from a wide variety of organizations.
The top 4 issues that we discerned are housing, transit, poverty, and social isolation.
We're not a member of the Metro Vancouver Alliance yet, but just seeing the passion and the energy and the commitment in the room, I think we might well become a member.
And so our task before us is a large one. But I must say that I am so honored to be here tonight and pledge the support of the Federation of Labor to this so important project, which we hope will not only be a huge success in Vancouver, but this model will spread across the province and make sure that every community sees the kind of unity in this room tonight.
I'm Molly Caron for Access Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and communities.
Really wants to have this Aboriginal Healing Wellness Center here.
I had a dream about this place. I know how it's supposed to look.
Damn it, let's paint this building and make it the place that we need it to be.
Just want to look at them to